Hi there and welcome to this video. In this video, you're going to see how to set up Ubuntu 24.04. So this is an initial server setup for Ubuntu 24.04. Get your Ubuntu 24.04 production ready. If you're on Windows, you can follow along. Just install Git and then open Git Bash. And that will enable you to follow all the commands that I'm going to use. And the commands I will use are all in this post. I will add the link in the description below. This is on bizanosa.com. I will use Vultr for this example. Vultr is a cloud provider. They offer VPS servers, dedicated VPSs as well, GPU servers, cloud GPUs, bare metal servers. If you want to use a GPU server for a few hours, then Vultr has that for you. All the billing for all the servers is done hourly. If you want to try them, I have $300 of free credit in the description below. It will give you access to all the servers that they offer. All right, so let's get started. If you don't have an account, you can create an account with them. If you do, go ahead and log in and let's deploy Ubuntu 24.04. So I'll come back to my account, then go to products. I don't have a server yet, so I'm just going to deploy server. And I will choose shared CPU. In this example, I'm going to choose my data center as Chicago. I will select high performance. Let me go with Intel for once. And I'm going to select 2 virtual CPUs, 2 GB of RAM. Click on that. Configure. So you can see the pricing is $18. And yet the total price here is $21. That's because of automatic backups. So if you're running a workload, make sure you enable automatic backups. If you don't need it, you can disable it. For the operating system, of course, I'm doing Ubuntu today. So I'm just going to go with Ubuntu 24.04. SSH key, we're not going to add that now, but you can always add your SSH key and select it from there. Server host name, I'll just go with a host name like that. And then for IP, just select IPv6 as well. It is free, so why not? And pretty much that's all I need for my server. I'm going to deploy, give it a few minutes to come online, and then we're going to log in. So the details for your server are here. If you want to log in, you can copy your IP. I'll open terminal. If you're on Windows, as I've said, download and install Git and then open Git Bash. So I'll SSH into my new server. The user is root. Enter. Type yes to confirm. Get the password from here. Control-Shift-V. Enter. Control-L to clear the screen. And I can update. Apt. Apt update. Let's see if we have any updates. 7 packages can be upgraded. Let's upgrade them. So apt upgrade. -y. Enter. Apt upgrade. -y. There we go. The updates are complete. Now let's get started with what we have here. So I'll add the link to this post in the description. If you want to follow along, you can just go to the link and follow along. So we've deployed the server, we've logged in, I've updated the server. So the first thing, we can create a user. Instead of using the default user, you can create a user. Use any username that you prefer there. I'm just going to use the example, which is here. So first, create a user, Control-Shift-V, add user, the space at the beginning, remove these spaces. I'll remember to remove these spaces. So enter a password for the user. For the rest of the items, just press enter to escape, or rather to skip them. The new user has been created. Now let us add the user to the sudo group. This way we can use it to manage the server. Copy, Ctrl L to clear the screen, Ctrl Shift V to paste. If you are on Git Bash, Shift Insert to paste. So you need to confirm if this user that you've just created can actually use the sudo command successfully. So let's open a new terminal window. Ctrl Shift T, copy, it's the new user. And then once you log in, the most important thing is for you to confirm if you can actually use sudo. So you'll do sudo apt update and enter the password for the user. There you go. Well and good. Now you can use this user to manage your server. And if you're feeling pretty lazy, you don't want to type sudo all the time, you can actually switch to the root user from this user. Just do sudo su dash enter, and now you're like the root user again. You can just work without adding sudo. So I'll exit out of the root user, and for this other one as well, I can just close this window now that I have a user that I can use to manage the server. At some point, we're going to disable the root user from logging into our server. So let's come and see what is the next step. We've tested the user. Now the next step is to set up SSH key login for that user. So we are doing this for the user we've just created because at some point we're going to disable the root user. So that means we are doing this for the user we've just created. So this is done on your local computer. And if you're on Windows, this is going to work for you as well. Just make sure you're following along with Git Bash. The first line will create a directory. You can call the directory whatever you prefer. And then for SSH keygen, we're going to generate a key of type ED25519. And then we are going to put it in the folder we've created and we'll give it that name. If you want to change anything, especially the name, you can do so. So I'm going to copy that, come back and make sure you're running this on the local computer. You're not running this on your server. So open a new terminal window. Control Shift T on my terminal here will open a new tab of the terminal, and I can run those things on my local computer. Paste, enter. So there's probably a space issue. So just make sure you remove the spaces. Sometimes I add them for ease of readability, but it seems like they're affecting everything. There you go. So just one space is enough for each of this, and it seems like my terminal is pretty strict about that. So enter the passphrase. You can enter a passphrase. A passphrase is simply like a password for the key. So every time you use the key, every time you want to log in with the key, you'll need to enter the passphrase. In this case, I'm just going to press enter. That means I won't set a passphrase for the key. Enter and just confirm. There you go. Now the keys have been generated and you'll find them there. You'll find the keys there. So this is a key that we need to add to our server. So I'll do Ctrl L to clear the screen, and we'll continue by adding the key to the server. So you'll use SSH copy ID to copy the key, SSH copy ID -I, and then the public key, and then that is the user plus the host for your server. Copy this first part up to .pub. Ctrl Shift V. I want to add it for this user. copy, Control Shift V, enter. So the password for this user is the one I set. There you go. The key has now been added for this user and we can use it to log in. So to log in, you'll just use SSH once again, plus the user and the identity of the key. So let us just get things from here. Control A. I want to delete all of this. And then SSH user, and then the identity of the key, -I, and the identity of our key is that. Let's remove all the spaces. So the identity of your key is that. These are the keys that you use to log in. This is a key that you use to log in. That is the private key. And then enter. And there you go. Now you're logged in with your SSH key. That's how to log in with your SSH key. Let's go back and see it again. I'll exit to log out. Enter. Control L. And there. So SSH, the user and the IP, the identity of the key, there. So that's how you log into your server now that you have an SSH key. The next step is to disable password authentication. So when somebody needs to log into your server, they'll always need the key. So disable the root user from logging in to your server. So we are going to add this by creating a custom configuration file under the SSH configuration directory. So if I look into that directory, probably there are other things there. Let's just check. ls/etc. Right, so you can see there is something in there. Let me see what's inside here. This was created by Cloud Init sudo. So you can see this one allows password authentication. So you can actually just edit this file. Instead of creating your own, you can edit the file, or you can just remove it. In this case, let me remove it. Sudo rm let's create our own configuration file with vim. Control Shift V, enter, and you're going to copy this. So this is going to disable root, login, and password authentication. So if somebody has to log in, they have to have an SSH key, and they also should not be the root user. Escape, Shift ZZ, and you'll need to restart SSH. Control Shift V, enter. I can just look at this to see what is the issue. Control Shift C, Control Shift V, Control A, sudo, Control E. Instead of X, let me use F. Enter. Failed to start SSH. Okay, so there's some spaces in what I've added. So it's just an issue of space. Control C. In the configuration that I created, it's just space. I'm going to remove all those spaces, and I added the spaces just for ease of readability, but it seems they're affecting everything. So let me edit again. So permit root login. So I'll just use a single space. Before you get this, I'll make sure to remove all the spaces in all of the commands. But now you know if there's any issue you experience, it's probably due to spacing. Shift ZZ to save. Let's try again. Restart SSH, and now it has restarted successfully. Control L, and I'll try to log in now. You can see now I have not shown the path of my SSH key. So it's going to tell me I need a key to log in. Enter. So permission denied, you need a public key. All right, so let's try and log in with the root user. And it's going to show you the same error, and that's because the root user doesn't have an SSH key added, and they also are not allowed to log in. So that's how to disable the root user and the password authentication. The next part is one of the most important things you can do for your server, and that is to set up a firewall. So on Ubuntu, you'll usually find that Ubuntu will come with UFW, but just get used to using Nftables. Nftables is currently actively being developed and improved, and it is the replacement for IP tables. So for that reason, I'm going to use Nftables as my server firewall. First of all, remove UFW and IP tables, and I'll do Ctrl+Shift+V to paste. Enter. So IP tables and UFW have been removed. The next step is to activate Nftables because it usually comes by default in almost every Linux distro. So let's copy that, and we're going to enable it, enable, and start it. So if I was to do systemctl starters, you'll see now it is active and it's enabled. When the system starts, it will start with the system. Control L to clear the screen, come back, and on Ubuntu, this is the default configuration file, and you can just use this file. You don't have to create a new file, just edit the default file. Ctrl+Shift+V, enter, and inside here you can see there are these rules. By default, these are not doing anything. They're pretty much allowing everything. So we can delete everything from here. Let's say 59DD to delete everything there. And then I'm just going to copy this configuration. This is based on the Nftables wiki. You can see it's just pretty much the same thing. If you want to add any rule, maybe you want a new SSH port, you can add it there, or you can add it in a new line. And we're going to add that as well in a moment. So Ctrl+Shift+V. So these are the ports that are allowed. If you want to add any port, you can add it. So I added this here as an example, but let me just add it in its own line. So let's say I want to add a custom SSH port, and I will change the SSH port momentarily. So let's say this, I want to add my SSH port here as well. So I'm going to make sure to press escape, and then I will copy this line. I'll just do YYP to copy and paste it below, and I can enter. I can go into insert mode by pressing I, delete everything in there. So if it's only one item, I don't have to put it in the braces. So let's say my new SSH key will be 2090, and you can save. If you want to add any new ports, maybe you want to add the ports for mail, you can add port 25. You can add port 25. Maybe you're using cPanel and you want to open the ports for cPanel, and so on. So that's pretty much the gist. You just add the port you need and it will be allowed in the firewall. So escape, Shift ZZ, and then we can restart Nftables, or rather, these are some aliases I usually use. It seems I haven't added them here, so systemctl reload. Let me just reload, and don't forget your sudo systemctl reload Nftables. There we go. Control L, and you can look at your current rules. nft list rule set, sudo. So you can see this. Okay, so since I removed the first configurations, let me restart the server. If you reload, it just reloads any new rules that it finds. So let me just restart it. Systemctl restart. There you go. Now you can see it's only using the rules that I've added. Okay, so let's come back and see what is next. Firewall done. The next item, Ubuntu 24.4, change the SSH port. So in the configuration file that we created earlier, we're just going to add the new port. So copy, Control L, Control Shift V to open that file. And as usual, the spacing, this spacing, I add them for aesthetics, for ease of readability, but that is now working against me, as you can see. Shift A to go into insert mode, and then I'm going to enter port 2090, escape, Shift ZZ. Let's restart SSH daemon/socket. So on Ubuntu, depending on the system you get, Ubuntu 24.4, you might find that it's running as a socket or the daemon itself. In this case, that's why I've added both commands. The first one will just restart SSH, and that will restart the daemon. And then the next one, in case you're using SSH socket, this will reload it and add the new port that you set up. So let's copy this. So if this is not running for me, I'm going to get an error, but don't worry about it. We're going to test and make sure that the new port is accessible. So Control Shift V. So the second one failed. SSH socket. This one as well, I'm going to just put it in its own line. And this is the one that failed. Control Shift C, Control Shift V. Yeah, that's the one that failed. At this point, we have changed the SSH port. So let's just confirm. In certain cases, you're not going to receive this error. It seems like on Vultr, they have disabled the SSH socket. So let's go to Control Shift T. And we are going to, let me get my login here. I don't want to type. That's the last place where I logged in. So let me copy that. I don't want to type. Control Shift V. And let's try to log in. You can see now port 22, connection refused, because this port is not our current SSH port. If you want to log in now, you have to explicitly define the port, and in this case, you'll just use -p, and our port was 2090. If your port is different, use your port, and I do suggest you don't use 2090. Lots of people will probably use this, so use a different one. There you go. Now you're logged in with your new port. And you might also want to reboot the server just to make sure that you're not, you want to reboot with sudo. You want to reboot to make sure that, yes, you can still log in. So let's give it a moment to restart, and then we can try and log in again. It seems like it's back up. It is back up. So let's log in again. there you go. You can log in after reboot. That's important to check before you do a lot of things. Just make sure you confirm that you're able to log in. You can create a swap file, but I saw that Vultr creates a swap file for you. Let's confirm this. free-h, and you can see they create a swap file for you. So you don't need to create one because it's already created there on Vultr. On other cloud platforms, you probably need to create it, especially if you have less than 4 GB of RAM and you're going to run lots of things on the server. And then change the server host name. So when you're deploying a server on Vultr, make sure you use the host name that you want to use. Like in my case, that's what I did. So if I was to look at host name, let's look at the full host name. You'll see that is my host name. And the good thing with this is that it has also added it. It has also added this on my etc hosts. So this might be important if you're running something like Kubernetes or you're running mail servers and servers need to talk to each other through the host. So you can see here, it's added to that. If it is not here, you have to go into this file and edit the template, and it's going to show up here when you reboot. If you change it in the etc hosts, the change will not persist. So I'm not going to go into this. Depending on your cloud provider, if you need help with it, let me know. I can create a short video for it, but it doesn't really matter. If you're using a cloud platform like Hetzner, Vultr, DigitalOcean, they usually allow you to add the host name for your server and then set the time zone. Let's copy this, Control L, Control Shift V. Let's select Africa and I can search for N, Nairobi. There you go. Now, if I was to look at my date, it's going to show me the right time. Let's see if there's anything that's remaining. Okay, now let me just do, before I end the video, at least let me do one thing for you. And this is also important. You can install fail to ban, or you can also use crowdsec. So for the purpose of this video, I'm going to use crowdsec. So I'm just going to install it on Ubuntu. So that's going to add the repository that's going to install crowdsec. And this is going to install the firewall bouncer. This is what's responsible for blocking items with crowdsec. You can read more about crowdsec from their documentation. Control L, Control Shift V, enter. And I'd like to add that when you're installing crowdsec, make sure you install it as the last item, because when you do that, it's going to automatically pick up every item you have, whether it's Nginx, Apache, MariaDB. It's going to pick up all these items and it's going to download the right collections that can secure those items. So it's always best to install it as the last item, but even if you don't install it as a last item, you can still reset it. You can still set it up after you install all the items you're installing. So if you come here, you'll see that there are certain collections that it installed, and that is based off of this. So it detected that we are on Linux, and it also detected that we're using SSH, OpenSSH. So if you had more items, it would have detected all those items and then downloaded the right collections that would secure your server. But that is not a problem. We're going to see how to fix that in a moment. So for now, if I was to do CS CLI, this is the interface for crowdsec, the CLI interface. So CS CLI metrics. So if you do metrics, you can just see what it has picked up. For now, it has picked up Valog, and these are authentications for your Linux server and SSH. So that's what it has picked up, but we can add more items. So for example, let's install Apache and Nginx, sudo, and we're going to see how we can make crowdsec detect those items. Install Apache 2, and let's also install Nginx as the last item that we'll do in this Ubuntu 24.4 initial server setup, making it production ready. So by default, usually Apache will be running. I know it's already running, but Nginx, I need to start it up. So I can't start Nginx because it's using the same port as Apache. So first of all, let's go and change the port for Apache. And at the same time, crowdsec also uses port 8080 on the local host. So make sure nothing else is using that port. So let's change the port for Apache, Control L, VIHC. I don't know where this is, but I'm going to find it. Apache. And let me see where it is. Which file do I need to edit here? Ports, yeah, ports. Go to ports, tab, and let's change the listening port for Apache. I will change it to, let's use port 8081. 8081. And then for SSL as well, we can make this listen on port 8443 or whichever port you want. The good thing is that if you have Apache and Nginx on the same server, then it means that these ports will not be accessible from outside of should not be accessible from outside of your Linux server, because you use Nginx to reverse proxy these items. That's the point of having Nginx and Apache on the same server. So Shift ZZ to save. Oh, I forgot to use sudo. Shift ZQ. I always forget to use sudo. So what I'm going to do, let me just go to be the root user, and I can run this. Control Shift C, Control Shift V, enter. Shift A to edit at the end of the line. We chose to go with port 8081 here as well. Let's change the listening port for SSL to 8443 here as well. Let's change the listening ports to 8443, escape, Shift ZZ, and then go here again under sites enabled and the default configuration. Here for the default configuration as well, let's change this to listen to the port we have set up, which is port 8081. Anything else with a port here? Nothing. So escape, Shift ZZ, and then now we can restart. Now we can start Apache. Without doing that, now we can, start Nginx. Systemctl. Let us just restart Apache first. Restart Apache 2. Enter. And then we can enable and start Nginx. Enter. There we go. If you don't change the port, Nginx is not going to start. So the point of the video, the point of this part why I installed Apache and Nginx is to show you that if you want to make crowdsec recognize those items, you can just do CS CLI setup, and this is going to recognize those items. Detect and configure services, yes. So you can see that when I run it the second time, it has noticed that we have Linux, Nginx, Apache, and so on. Enter, enter, and it's going to install everything it needs. And now you need to reload crowdsec. Control Shift C, Control Shift V, enter, Control L. Now if we do CS, CLI, metrics, it has not taken the logs for Nginx yet, but they should be taken. And if by any chance logs are not taken, you can actually show crowdsec where the logs are. Crowdsec does not automatically know where all the logs are. So if you install it like this and you just leave it, assuming that crowdsec now knows where everything is, that's usually not the case. Crowdsec, sometimes you need to guide it and let it know, here are my logs, these are the logs I want you to pass, and ensure that there are no bad actors scanning my websites. So here I'm going to go into vi/etc crowdsec, and here we need to go into acquisitions.d, and for whichever item that you want to show it the logs, let's just do tab. So I'm just pressing tab and I want to see all the items which are here. So we have Apache, we have Nginx. So let's go to Nginx. So you can see this is where it's looking for logs, right? So it's looking for all the logs here. So any logs that you have, they will be passed. But right now we don't have any website that has any log there. So let's give it at least one log that I know exists. So let's do yyp. I just want to copy that line, varlog. Let's confirm something, Control Z. And so I just Control Z to put that in the background. Control L, tail-f. Let's go to var. Okay, there's nothing in those files, so probably that's why it doesn't bothered, but let's try and go. Okay, you can see now there's something here. At least we have something in the log files. Control C. So and now you can see the Nginx logs have been identified. So let's go back to how to show it where the logs are, especially if you use systems like something like CyberPanel. The logs are just in a very weird place, so you might need to tell your system where the logs are. So let's do FG to go back to this item that we put in the underground. So if there is any log file somewhere, maybe it's in home, press I to go into insert mode, home, logs, and they're in multiple files. You just want to find any item named log and add it there. You can just add the wildcard there, and it's going to find any log files in home, logs. If there are files in there, it will look for all files, and it will also pick up all logs. If you know what I'm saying, then you understand it. If you don't, I don't know how I can help you, but I hope you understand it. Shift ZQ so that we don't save that, and that's pretty much ends this video. What I've done is I've tried to help your Ubuntu 24.4 become production ready. So I'll add the link to this post. If you experience any problems, let me know. If you need help with things like this, you can always contact us. All our pricing is there, publicly displayed for you. You don't have to contact me to ask for price. Everything is displayed there. One-time support and Bizanosa expert care, which is our Linux support subscription. So this can work on any VPS. You don't have to use Vultr for this. Any VPS, this will work for you. If you experience any problem, feel free to contact us. We are ready to help you for a very small fee, very small price. It's not that expensive for now. See you next time. If you experience any problems with this that you need help with, just leave a comment below. I'll see how to help you. Until next time, in another video.